That was so nice. Hey, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. If anyone wants to, there are a few remaining chairs. It's an exciting night. The show Chad has been working on for a little bit now. And this is his fourth show at the gallery. Each show has been sort of another incarnation of Chad, if you will. You know, it's the evolution of an artist. And Chad was one that we were lucky enough to first come on board when you were about 30, and now he's cracked that 40 barrier. But I'm old enough now to still consider him a young artist. But it's been great seeing it's the evolution of his work and how each individual show has been something different. And if you had the pleasure of coming to our last show, this is sort of a lights on moment to where the last show was more earthy and more, and this is now just his color and the color fields and how it works then. This is Chad taking, his own adaptation from, the 1950s and 1960s, abstract expressionist movement, and adding his own sort of modern touch to it with use of, solvents and letting, the paints naturally blend into each other, kind of creating what we have here. Chat and talk, and then we'll take some questions after, and we're here, and so we can answer anything that needs to be answered. But that's enough from me. And the man we really want to hear from is Chad. And Chad, thank you so much for putting this together. You made my gallery a beautiful place, and I'm always appreciative of that. And without further ado, here you go.
Well, thank you, Buck. I want to thank the Kiechel family, Buck, Lisa, for allowing me to have another show. And I approached Buck and said I want to do a spring show. I've done only fall shows, and I want this show to be about big abstract paintings. And he's like, cool, go with it. And been working on this for 18 months or so in Kearney, Nebraska, where my studio's at. And I also want to acknowledge Chloe. Chloe, who's a gallerist here. I mean, she and I have been touching base on a weekly basis at least, probably for the past 6 to 9 months, just to make sure we have everything organized. She did a beautiful job of documenting the work. There's a really phenomenal catalog in the back that she designed, and then also the show card. And then I also want to thank my family and also my beautiful wife. I'll stop embarrassing you. So let's talk about art. I personally love abstract painting. When I go to a gallery museum, it is a delight to see a new abstract painting or even an abstract painting that I've seen previously and have an experience with it and see what I'm thinking or feeling. And there's something exciting, kind of like when you're a little kid and you go out to play with your neighbor kids or other school kids, and there's that joy of curiosity and experiencing something that you haven't seen before. And that was kind of what I wanted to create with this show. Another thing that kind of changed in the past year or so, instead of thinking about painting as individual works or objects, I kind of started opening up my mind to my creative path, and it was more of well, what if I thought about painting as installation? And that opened up looking at my studio practice as creating an ecosystem that all the work that I'm doing is in dialogue with each other. And so that's what kind of happened with this show. So I look at this show as a full installation where I wanted to see what all the work looked like with the same sight lines. And I wanted to make the show about color. I wanted to make the show about color theory, and then also just the application and joy of like oil painting. So 1950s and 60s, there was a color fields movement within the abstract expressionism movement, especially in New York City. And it's described as people just doing compositions of like flat color that just kind of like interact and mix with each other, more like ethereal. And there was some like breakthrough moments during this time of, instead of applications from traditional means with a brush, artists were like really pushing the boundaries in an unorthodox way of like, how can they apply paint to different surfaces? And so like one, well-known artist, and we have a beautiful one at Sheldon Art Museum, is by Helen Frankenthaler, where she had this like staining technique that she did. And she got really excited after she did it that she invited her other artist friends in New York. It's like, you need to see this. And it was like groundbreaking for a lot of them. It gave us artists like Morris Lewis and his beautiful paintings. Later, like Larry Poons, who like throws paints and then creates these like really interesting textural, like ethereal atmospheres. And I've always been captivated by that. So with me, when I was an undergrad at UNL, I was introduced to J.M. Turner's work, who was a British painter. And he created these like really weird, ethereal, luminous, like haunting, dramatic, like seascape paintings. And some of them were like just really obscure and abstract, but I was like really captivated by the textures of them. And when I went to New York City for the first time with a college trip, I was able to finally see my first painting of his. And I just had a moment of like, oh my gosh, like I'm in love with this, and I want to try to do something that's similar. So I started messing around with pooling mineral spirits on the surface of my canvases. And it kind of created these weird ethereal effects. When I was a young boy growing up, my parents saw my interest in art, and I first started out as a watercolorist, which pretty much, when you're doing watercolor, you're staining the paper. And I always loved how the watercolor would look when it was wet. And then when it dried, it wasn't as saturated, it wasn't as interesting to me. Well, when I did it with oil and mineral spirits, I was getting those effects, and I was able to kind of keep that saturation, but it still was a little bit matte on canvases. So I started experimenting after college on translucent surfaces like transparency film, which is pretty much the film from like slide projectors, for those of us that are old enough to remember that from school days. And I painted on it, and I did not know if oil was going to stick to it. And then I pooled mineral spirits to kind of create these ethereal effects, and I was like, that's really cool. And then I turned it around and saw that the atmosphere created these ethereal effects that I could not get on the painterly side, and it looked more saturated because of how light reflected off this pristine surface on the back. So thus started my journey of reverse painting. So I've kind of played with traditional means of painting on opaque surfaces like canvas, and then I'm also painting on unorthodox surfaces like a mylar, like a dular or transparency film, and now glass. So, but I've never been able to like really bring them together in the same juxtaposition. So going back to like thinking about painting as creating like this environment and installation, I went back to like previous artists I really love, like Joseph Albers, and just the joy of like thinking about color and monochromatic color and thinking about like the square composition. And I was like, well, what if I take my canvas and then I take like pretty much a paint swatch of like all the paint or all the colors I used directly out of the tube, and then just did these like really monochromatic, like ethereal atmospheres with mineral spirits on the transparencies, but then I put it on the wall on a grid in juxtaposition next to the canvas. And I did that solely because I wanted to see what it looked like. And I was captivated by it. So, and I was like, I told Buck, I'm like, this is what I want to do. And he's like, cool, let's go for it. And I'm glad that he allowed me to do that. And one thing I will also say, and then kind of wrap it up, the two pieces I think were like really, three pieces that were groundbreaking is the Color Fields blue in the back, and then the Color Fields blush in the back there. It really was, I was just kind of doing the same process as Joseph Valber's Homage to the Square of, I'm literally taking paint directly out of the tube, and I was like, well, I just want to see how these two colors interact with each other with complete perfect like symmetry and see what happens. So I just started with blue and orange, which were complementary colors, and I was like, well, what if I take a different blue and a different orange? And then I got done doing a set of three, and then I did yellow, and then I was like, well, what if I do a color wheel of it? And then as I was painting, I was pretty captivated by this weird, like, muted pink color, and I was like, well, what if I pair that with, like, really bright, saturated paint out of the tube? And that's what happened with the Color Fields blush. And when I got done with the Color Fields blush, I had my last diptych that I was going to do. And so that's how this diptych, Shadow Self, was born, because it was inspired by my Color Fields blush composition. And it was really fun. And the last pieces I did were the glass pieces. And I just went to my palette grid, and I really loved the luminosity of phthalo green and cobalt blue. So I was like, I'm going to do a tribute to these two colors and do it the same exact way that I did with the other paintings. And that's what happened. And I'm really, really excited and really proud with how this show came out. So, don't know if I have like much else to say, but like, thank you again for like coming out. And I encourage any of you, like, please come back to the gallery when it's like not so busy and have quiet moments and like really take it in. And I feel like this is awakening. Like, I feel like I finally am starting to arrive as an artist, and I'm going to be 43 next month. And I want to see what happens. And I feel really excited every time I go in the studio, because I don't know what's going to happen, and then I get excited sharing it within my network, and then I'm fortunate enough to have a platform like Kiechel where I'm able to share that with the public. So, again, thank you very much.
Talk about the blush color.
So the blush color, I had this like random tube that was like this muted pink, and it kind of started with the Color Mirror blush canvas in the back. That was kind of like one of the first canvases for the show. So that was meant to just be an underpainting, that whole transition of those colors. So I was really just playing where I just wanted to kind of do this like earthy like transition, and it started with the blush on the top and then went to a more saturated pink. And the cool thing is when I'm doing the transparency paintings unframed, I just tape them up onto my wall in my studio. Any of you that follow me on Instagram and like look at my story, you probably saw some of them. I could just take them off the wall, and then I could like use them as paint chips almost. And I was really captivated how you take like just a muted color like that, and then you put it to like a sap green or a phthalo green or a cobalt blue. And I was really captivated because it really enhanced the other colors. So I call it the hero color because not in itself, it's not the most beautiful color, but I think paired with other colors, it brings out the best in other colors, if that makes sense.
Is it a two color?
Yeah.
First of all, I absolutely love your art. It's just gorgeous. And it's been fun to see you grow, because we went to art school together in high school. He's blossomed so much. I wonder if you can talk about, since it's so much color and color relationship, how you document when you're making the colors and mixing them, and how you document that to recreate it or change it, and what that journey looks like as the colors develop.
So the color, I didn't overcomplicate it by trying to like mix like a palette. I kind of use the mineral spirits mix the paint up themselves, so I just use paint straight out of the tube. And then I let the mineral spirits kind of be the means for creating the transition points. And like sometimes like these like really subtle gradations and transitions here, I'm not the best at doing that with like a brush. I mean, maybe Aaron is, but like, or some other artist, but like I'm not good at it. And like I'm really captivated with the mineral spirits, the subtlety of it. Like back there, the blush painting, I'm really captivated by the top third of the painting where it's like the most saturated, like bright pink. And that transition is like so subtle, but I think is so beautiful, and that's a product of the mineral spirits. So I didn't really worry too much about like trying to mix like this perfect palette that was really interesting. I just was going to let the paint and the mineral spirits and like the action of in that process kind of,
magic potion.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question, so.
Okay. Yeah, it does.
So I'm really excited by both the texture and all the energy in the brush strokes, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. There's more here than just color.
Yeah, I mean, so one artist that isn't really technically like color field, she's kind of like more gestural and kind of like in her own category, is Joan Mitchell. And that also what kind of encouraged me to try doing diptychs or triptychs. I was fortunate enough to go to the St. Louis Art Museum and see the Joan Mitchell Claude Monet show. And it was just a fraction of the show that they had in Paris. But that was the first time I was able to see her work and a bunch of her work in the same room, along with like Monet's work. And I was really captivated with her brushstrokes and how she was willing to be like really loose and gestural and really use the edge of the canvas and purposely do like negative space. And how she would paint is she would just paint like individual panels, and then she would have these panels just lined up against her wall and then tick it up, and then she would like then put them together and to kind of create an interesting composition. So I kind of was inspired by that, and then I was also studying Hans Hofmann and Rothko. I'm also Jack Whitten. I've been reading a lot of his letters because he created a really interesting ecosystem of like his own like means of creating like visual language. So I don't know if like I'm answering your question, but like it starts with gestural marks with the brush, and then afterwards I then pulled it with the mineral spirits. And a lot of times my previous work has been more like thin flat washes that I wanted to have more of an even wash. This one I like purposely wanted the canvas to be very physical, so I didn't want it to be perfect. So I wanted to kind of show a little bit of that transition of like brush strokes to where I'm doing like the pooling with the mineral spirits. And also like every paint from different paint tubes is different, has like a different characteristic to it. So I also wanted to showcase that. So some paints cooperate a lot better than other paint pigments. And it just is how it is, and you don't understand that unless you're a painter. So, yeah.
Are you painting on the floor and then hanging and finishing on the wall, or what's going on?
So I like to paint when the painting is upright on the wall. So I'll put it on the wall just like this, not even at an angle, and then I'll do gestural painting. And then when I'm ready to do the mineral spirits, I have a big drop cloth, canvas drop cloth that I will put the canvas on, and then I will pull the mineral spirits, and then I'll walk around and like lift it up and try to like manipulate it the best I can, but I don't have full control. And then it gets to a point where it is what it is, and then kind of say a prayer and positive vibes and see what happens. And then 24 hours later, I go and see what happened. And then if it's really exciting, I'm like, Krista, you need to see this. And then if it's not, I'm just like, okay, I need to continue like working on it. But that's part of the joy and torment, I think, of, at least for me, for painting that I really love.
Okay.
Yep.
So how has living in central Nebraska for the last couple of years impacted the way, what you see, how you paint?
That's a great question, and I'm going to put Charlie Friedman on the spot. So I work for a roofing company during the summertime. So I'm out on the highway a lot, like driving to like different clients or like customers. And so I have a lot of time to like talk on the phone. And I was touching base with Charlie. We were just having a really good conversation. And he mentioned that he was really excited for me because I lived in pretty much the middle of nowhere, and it was the best thing for like a creative person because you don't have distractions. You have time to think, you're not distracted, you have space. I'm fortunate to have a beautiful studio, and I never thought about it that way. So after we had that first conversation, it like really allowed me to like embrace that. And then it was also kind of the first time in my adult life that like I really had like a full job like after college that didn't take any of my creative energy. So then when I do get to the studio, it is like pure joy, and like I am ready to like jam out. So, and I don't know if that makes any sense to a lot of you, but like, so living in Kearney has actually been beneficial. And then also, I mean, sometimes like as an artist, like being represented by a gallery, like you want to do the best you can, but sometimes it's nice having it like an arm's length distance away so I could just jam out and like focus on making work. And then I could touch base with Buck, and then he could kind of see what's going on and just kind of have that dialogue. And Buck's always been an advocate where his motto to me is just like, just keep painting, man. That's it. That's all he wants me to do is just keep painting, keep doing you, and that's it. He wants to see what happens.
Always exciting, always different.
Yep.
You know, it's,
I mean, this would be your fourth show here. And I mean, it's amazing to see like sort of the growth and how each show is its own separate entity. And thank you all for coming and experiencing color fields. And I can't predict what's going to be next, but Chad can. Really excited to see the glass pieces as well, because it's something that Chad has been talking about for a while and trying to experiment with them. When you look at them, look at them through the middle of the side of the glass, and it sort of even gives a sort of a deeper element of kind of what's going on, because there are actually three different. It's really interesting dynamic, and so we're trying to find more glass. We'll see how it goes. Anyone else? Yeah.
Last question. Joseph Albers, you brought up 3 times.
Yeah.
I fell in love with your work the first time I saw it, coming in raw.
Mm-hmm.
How much is that, his color theory book, is that an unconscious competency for you? The way you mix color is unlike most artists. Specifically abstract art. Can you speak to that a little bit? Is that, how much did Joseph Albers' color theory impact?
So I guess, I mean, I wasn't alive at that time period, but looking at Joseph Albers and his spouse, his wife, Annie Albers, with her textiles, like, I feel like them, along with other artists, had such an influence on the aesthetics of that time period and era that I was really captivated by, because like mid-century modern is like still relevant today. And also I think why I'm so in awe of Joseph Albers, of like, he wasn't trying to be clever or like overly like academic of like, oh, I'm smarter than other people. He's just more like, I'm going to take a square, which is like a very like intimidating composition, and I'm just literally going to take paint straight from the tube, and I'm just going to create these like color relationships and then see what happens, and then take them in the natural light, artificial light, see them from a distance, seeing them up close, and then just do these studies. And it's that simple. It's that simple. So like, to me, it's super encouraging that if you're an artist, sometimes you could overthink things, and sometimes you just need to like play and explore, and then sometimes you need to like add things, and then sometimes you need to like rip like things back to like their purest form and see if there's something there, and then think about like, what's your visual language? And my visual language is, I love painting with the mineral spirits, but I also love painting with big canvases, but I also love painting with like small transparencies, and I want to do both. And I don't think one is greater than the other. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean, that's why I mentioned him, is like, I just have And he gladly wanted to share what he discovered with other people.
Well, your work clearly speaks to all those color theories, and you're using it on two different mediums: linen, canvas, transparency. It's brilliant.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Chad will be around. So take a chance to look at everything. The show will be up, we're going to keep it up through first Friday in May. So the gallery's open. So come in and you can see everything, and it won't be like 10 degrees too hot in here. And sorry, it's like with a certain amount of people and a certain temperature, it tends to get a little muggy in here. But to be able to experience the space and experience the artwork without the crowds of people, it really is what it's designed for. And I want to thank Chad for keeping the gallery in mind as he was laying out each of the paintings and how they were going to play within the space. And grab yourself another drink. There are 2 other floors of art above us. Second floor, early 20th century. Third, the auction we're going to be having on April 11th. And thank you, Chad.